You're listening to AltElxn 2025, a national election broadcast series produced by stations across the country exploring underrepresented voices, emerging issues, and alternative perspectives in the lead up to Canada's federal election on April 28th. The initiative is supported by the Covering Canada Elections 2025 Fund in partnership with the Public Policy Forum, Rideau Hall Foundation, and the Michener Awards Foundation. Learn more at AltElxn.ca. And now, today's episode.
Hi everyone, welcome to our show that is just talking about student issues related to the elections that are taking place right now. My name is Gabriela and my co-host here,
I'm Lee.
Nice to meet you all, and I hope you're having a great day.
Today we have Dr. Kelly Bladew coming up in the program. And also, we will hear what some students and staff here at Memorial University campus have to say about the upcoming election.
When we say student issues, you're going to be like, what are student issues related to elections? But right from your rent, your tuition, health, it's just too many factors that affect students that we actually have to talk about. How exactly are these elections and these policies that the politicians want to put up front helping the students? And that's all we're going to discuss today in depth.
Yeah, for sure. I think we have a really interesting combination of perspectives here because, I've lived in Newfoundland my whole life. I'm they call domestic student, and you came here for university.
Yeah.
And even the differences in the tuition that we pay, it's really, really interesting. I always see engaged in conversations with international students about how honestly kind of unfair the tuition rates are, because I pay about $4,000 a semester, but that's hard enough for me to maintain, even working multiple jobs to put myself through school, because I don't have any scholarships. I'm not eligible for loans or anything like that. And if it's hard enough for me, I can't even imagine how hard it would be for international students to make enough money to put themselves through school.
Yeah, that's so true. And yes, I know that as international students, we don't really have a say in whatever is going on. But at the end of the day, we also feel like we should also be involved in the politics that are taking place, because at the end of the day, if it's an increase in tuition, we are being affected. An increase in groceries, we're being affected. An increase in rent, we're being affected either way. So I feel like it all matters. It all comes back to they have to put policies that favor each and everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's you said, that stuff does affect you guys too, and that must feel so helpless. If you don't have a say in anything, in the country that you're living in, especially if you plan to continue to live here after you finish your studies.
Yeah, because we are building our lives here. I can't come here for school and build all these relationships with people and do my networking. That's me building my foundation. So that means I'm going to be here for a while. And even if it's not for 10 years or more, it's just even with the 4 years I'm here, I just want it to be the best time. And I don't want it to be really overwhelming at the end of the day. So I still feel it really affects us all.
Absolutely. And it's such a difficult dynamic to maintain, especially if you're doing a full course load, because I've heard certain professors say students need to focus more on their studies, students aren't as engaged with school as they used to be, but so many students are having to work 2 and 3 jobs just to get by and survive, and they don't have time to focus on their studies and invest in their future because they're trying to survive right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, that's really true. And then some students come here, and funny fact is I came here and I think I wanted to do nursing. That was the first thing I thought about, because it's just out there. It's everyone telling you that with nursing you'll get a job, with nursing you'll get this and this. but it's only because of that pressure of, oh, I want to be here and be able to get a job immediately after. So people are being pushed to those programs where they feel like, oh, if I do this program, I'll get a job immediately. But is that what you actually want? Is that what you can actually do?
Yeah.
Those are questions that people don't even ask themselves, because we're living in this bubble of, we're trying to come from your study permit, then get permanent residence, and then you're just looking at a path that will lead you towards permanent residence in a smoother way. So you're going to end up and be pushed to do something you've actually never wanted to do. Like, I hated biology and chemistry, but in my mind, I'm like, I need to get a good job, so I need to go for nursing. But at the end of the day, I told myself, I can't lie to myself. So we need the education system to change so that it doesn't make people feel like when you're doing these other programs, you're actually not getting anywhere with what you're doing. Because I can't spend my 4 years in school just for me to think that, oh, at the end of my program, I'm not going to have a job. That is so discouraging.
It really is, yeah. And it's interesting that you bring up nursing as well, because there was a recent controversy, like, with the nursing school here, that, like, people were promised jobs upon graduation, but then there wasn't enough jobs for people, and out of their whole graduating class, I think, now it may have changed now because this was a couple months ago, but I think only like a couple people like secured jobs and stuff like that. And the healthcare sector is so understaffed right now too, which is really interesting. So it's like even these programs that are promising jobs like aren't even having like job openings really, especially like computer science too. Like everyone in computer science was like, oh, you're guaranteed a job when you graduate, but now with all the AI and stuff, like it's looking dire.
It's looking really bad.
Like, hug your friends who are CS majors. They're going through it right now.
Yeah, I know. Everyone's so discouraged in the CS program right now because the other day I was talking to someone when I went for a PAL session, like, oh, how are you finding computer science? And all they could say is, it's really hard right now and I have no hope of getting a job. And I was just like, that is so discouraging, because how are you in your last semester and you actually don't know the way forward? You actually do not know the way forward. So something has to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find it really interesting too, like, especially if we're talking about like sticking within the academic sphere, because I do know a lot of people who do want to stay within like the university environment and within academia. A lot of the policies being introduced are going to affect research and funding and like how that is governed. And so I think it will be very interesting to see what effects the outcome of this election is going to have on post-secondary institutions. Like we were going over some of the policies a little bit, and one thing that we noticed was that there's a lot of like super vague wording, which is a little bit daunting, because like if the wording is vague, then they can kind of change the policy subtly.
I know.
And like without people noticing, or it's like a little loophole for them to do that.
Like, we didn't say that. You got it wrong.
Exactly. And there was a lot of contradictions as well. Like the conservatives especially said that they want to end the imposition of woke ideology in research, which is a very scary thought, because first of all, what is defined as woke ideology?
Yeah.
And I feel like that will be targeting like humanities sectors a lot, especially. And obviously like STEM is very, very important, but humanities is important as well. And we've already seen so many funding cuts, even like here at MUN, to just not even just humanities programs, all programs. But there have been certain programs in humanities and departments that have either been dissolved or gotten their funding cut entirely. Like all of our language departments got assimilated into one big department that's like modern languages, literatures, and cultures. The religious studies department is at risk of like being cut entirely. Almost every humanities department has had like significant budget cuts and like faculty reductions and like reduced course offerings and things like that. And obviously with that comes reduced research opportunities as well. And so it's really scary that there seems to be this kind of like war on humanities, which, well, because it like often encourages a lot of like critical thinking and intersectionality, which I think are very, very important things to have, especially like considering everything that's happening in the United States. Like, we need to have different perspectives and we need to be able to like question things, you know?
Yeah, and why is everybody devaluing the humanities department? Yet I feel like it's, people look at it like, oh, humanities, oh, they're just doing some easy things. Like, it's STEM that are doing the hard things. But I did a humanities course, and trust me, because I'm a STEM person, I found humanities hard. So that's the same way people in humanities are finding that program hard, but they can't even speak up because everybody is just looking at them like, that is easy. That is something you can actually do.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Like, you wouldn't believe the stuff that people would say to me. I'm majoring in communications and media studies, and you wouldn't believe some of the stuff that people say to me. I'm like, oh, like, I'm doing this assignment for my class, and people will be like, oh my God, you're so lucky. I wish I was doing an easy program. Or, that sounds so cool. I wish I could do that. And I was like, you can. You can. But it's a really important sector in, like, academic research because it questions, like how media can like affect society and things like that, especially a lot of the time in reference to democracy and to like political public spheres and like people's ability to form their own opinions and engage in like politically charged discussion and things like that as well. And like obviously that's a very important thing. So, and like every single humanities department like has some value to it. Like we think like history and like French and languages and geography and like everything like that, even like English, like literature. And like we always see stuff on like circulating online about like kids literacy rates are going down. Yeah. And I'm like, it's because we're devaluing this kind of stuff. And it's very interesting to me that they're trying to do that, because people often look at STEM as like a very objective, like hard facts, hard data type of thing. Mm-hmm. But often there are biases in like algorithms and within data that we need humanities
like
people
to look at that.
To look at that, yeah. You're listening to our special 2025 federal election program regarding student issues. We'll be right back after these short messages.
Standing up against racism is an ongoing battle. How will you help?
I will listen to and learn from people who don't look like me.
I commit to find the strength to work on my own implicit biases, to better educate myself, and to encourage those around me to do the same.
I will listen actively and respectfully.
This message is brought to you by the Canadian Anti-Racism Youth Coalition. Visit caryc.ca for more information about how you can stand up and speak out.
If you're a chronic nostalgic who loves the music of Newfoundland and Labrador, tune in to the Newfound Records Radio Hour on CHMR 93.5 FM on Saturdays at noon. Join host Wayne Tucker as he shines a light on the music of the 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s. So whether you're a sentimental old-timer who's stuck in a vinyl groove, or a newbie eager to hear hard-to-find roots music of Newfoundland and Labrador, tune in to the Newfound Records Radio Hour on Saturdays at noon, where the unexpected is the norm.
1, 2, 3, 4. Hi, this is Kelly McMichael, and you're listening to CHMR at 93.5 FM or online at chmr.ca.
And we're back. Thank you for tuning in.
After graduating, I feel like the system should change to also help people in humanities get more jobs, because it can't just be people in STEM that think they will get the jobs and then people in humanities are just like really discouraged that someone is just there like, I just want to be done with this degree, but I do not know what's next, you know? And then everything is just like, oh, most of the job fairs here, actually, I'll talk about that. Most of the job fairs we have at MAN, 50% will be engineering companies.
Yeah, and there's a lot for business students as well.
50% will be engineering, then business. And then I look back, the last job fair I went to, I was just like, so all the students at MAN are expected to be in either business or engineering, because we are all going out there to look for jobs, and everyone's like, no, sorry, we're only looking for engineering students, or we're only looking for business students. Of course, I'm going to feel really bad, because why am I in school if the job fair, there's no one that wants to hire me, you know?
And you're a math major. I feel like you're probably just as qualified as them on certain things.
Yeah, like, weren't there opportunities for people, like, more than just us being on this business or engineering? Like, I'm okay with them having them at the job fairs, but it's pretty discouraging for students who are in other programs because they feel like they're getting nowhere.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's really, really scary to see this kind of devaluing of anything that isn't STEM or business, right? Because even like not every research area has to have some sort of capital value. And I think a lot of people have trouble comprehending that idea, because they think, oh, if something doesn't have an opportunity for capital gain, it's not worthwhile. But there's so many like archives and projects and things like that that are so important. Like here at Memorial University, we have the Center for Newfoundland Studies, which is like a very robust archive of like things related to Newfoundland. And things like that are so important, because like knowing our history is so important. So it's really scary if like if funding bodies are going to be like dissolved, or like funding will depend on like what kind of research it is, because like if those things go away, what's going to happen? You know?
And do you think that with whichever party will come in, Liberal or Conservative or any other party, do you think that they should tend more towards us having more affordable education generally? Because it's really getting out of hand right now.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I think fair access to education is a part of democracy, right? And I find it interesting because in the States, they're like taking so much funding away from education, because they like, at least I think they want people to be uneducated so they can like get people to do what they want, or get people to adhere to their policies, or like not question their policies, you know? But there's so much research done on like political standing and like education, and while that might be a slightly like privileged position to be in, I do think like having fair access to education is a part of democracy, and like making it as affordable as possible would be just essential. And especially where like we're bringing in professors from the States now, like U of T hired some like I think it was Yale professors. Canada seems to be like placing emphasis on education, considering our neighbors like devaluing it at the moment, which looks promising. But I do think we do need to invest in our communities and our like local researchers as well. But I know like NDP and the Green Party kind of wanted to work towards having free education, and while that is like so ideal, very amazing, I don't think it's a realistic expectation for this time around.
Very.
Especially considering the stakes of this election.
I feel like them talking about free education, that is pretty discouraging for people who want to go into the education sector, because they would feel like they won't really gain much from it.
Well, and people are complaining about the carbon tax. Imagine how much they would complain if we had higher taxes to have free education.
You know?
Because like at least from my perspective, now I don't have like a crazy amount of bills, but I feel like if we invest in these things and there's such a big positive outcome from investing in this stuff, like I wouldn't mind paying a little bit more taxes if I got free education, and that would mean that everybody had like fair access to it, you know?
Yeah, mentioning this, when you talked about like remove carbon tax and then make taxes higher just for free education, I just remember that one of the people we interviewed just said something of, do not remove carbon tax just to
put another tax on.
Just to put another tax on. So that's what people are expecting. Like, if you're removing this, let other things become cheaper, or it doesn't have to be remove the carbon tax, then we have to pay for it somewhere else.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's so interesting to me because people talk about taxes as if they're like this evil thing, and taxes are making everyone broke, and we're just paying into taxes so the government can give people money who don't work or whatever. And like, obviously that is part of it. Yeah. But you think like fixing the roads, our schools, like so many community-based programs that are so important and that people avail of like almost every day, taxes pay for that. Yeah. You know? And so like, taxes aren't evil, you know? They're contributing into all of these things. Like, if you drive every day, that road is paid for by taxes. The maintenance of that road is, you know? And so it worries me a little bit when certain parties will be like, oh, we're going to cut taxes, but then we're going to do this and this and this. Yeah. Because I'm like, where's that money?
Where's that money coming from? Yeah. You know? So it would have to be a lower GST or something. Either way, I feel like you will have to pay for it. There's just a way that we'll have to pay for it.
More financial strain on the backs of students, of course.
Yeah, more financial strain on students. But at the end of the day, like, I like the part of free education until you're done with high school. That I'll give them credit for that, because where I come from, that's not something we do. Like, you'll have to pay. School? It feels like private school actually, but the government schools, but we pay like way too much money. Wow. And then here it's like you'll have free education until high school. So that's a very, very good opportunity that I'll give them credit for that generally.
I know the NDP as well was trying to implement like a free lunch program at like primary and secondary schools across the country, which would be fantastic, especially considering like how expensive groceries are and stuff like
expensive.
That. It's like everybody should have access to education and like access to food. Yep. You know, like I know so many kids who went to school hungry as a kid.
That is so sad, because right now some people can't afford to eat like 2 meals a day. Yeah. Like you'll have to eat once a day and that's it. And too many students are living in such agonies right now. Absolutely. Because the rent is way beyond expensive. And by the time you're done paying your rent and phone bill, and that's all you've paid for after working 24 hours, that's all you can pay for.
And international students especially, like they have the limitation where they can only work 24 hours a week. And that's just during the school year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But they have so many more expenses, but then they have limitations on hours. But then the more you work, the less you focus on school. And then if you're doing poorly in school, then you could risk getting like kicked out or something like that.
That's
which
true.
is just, it seems like an endless cycle, and there's not really any way of like helping it.
Yeah, honestly, like that's why I feel like all these, I feel like everything affecting the country at large affects students too. Like that's why voting really matters for students, because we're looking at rent and then our tuition. All these are correlating, because if I'm not able to afford the rent, because grocery prices are going really high up there, and it's really crazy to afford what to eat lately. My friends can tell me sometimes they can't eat more than one meal, and it's really sad. So if I can't eat, when I come to school, I'm hungry. Of course, this is all affecting everything. Like everything is affecting each other. And I just feel like if they could change something, if there's change that could happen for everybody, it also affects us and it will work better for us. if grocery prices are lower, me as an international student, I'll be able to afford groceries and be able to eat. And that makes my life better. So that's why I've just encouraged people, even if I can't vote, I'll just encourage someone out there, please go vote, because once there's that change, it's affecting me too.
Absolutely.
And
and because like students, like we're going to be the next generation of people like going into the workforce, going into politics, going into everything, you know? So like, why shouldn't we vote to at least try and set ourselves up for success, or at least at this point the least amount of damage? Because we're just trying to create a better future for ourselves. We're going out there, going to look for jobs, we're going to start our own homes, and if we are not living in a society that we would actually want to live in, that is ideal for us, it's going to be hard. Absolutely.
It's going to be really, really hard. And then come to talk about everything, it comes down to mental health. Mental health, I feel like this is something people should actually advocate for, because students are struggling. Students are really struggling to juggle life.
And well, in the tuition plans that we went over for like Liberals, Conservatives, NDP, and Green Party, there was no mention of like increased access to like mental health resources for students.
I feel like that is something that is so overlooked. No one ever thinks that it's something that matters, but it is, because students are really struggling with school. I see people at MAN and they just hate it. People have to drop out because they can't do it anymore.
I've seen people experience some really severe burnout as well, because like there's the limitations on hours during the semester. And then I've seen people be working like 3 and 4 jobs over the summer, you know? Like one of my old coworkers from my old retail job, he would work at the store that we worked at from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. and then go work at this like bar/restaurant that he worked at from 7 p.m. to 4 a.m. and then wake up and do it again 4 more times in the week.
And that's the only time you get to rest. Can you imagine after your 2 semesters, the fall and the winter that have been brutal? Then now this is the time you think you can actually rest, but this is the time you're actually working
17
more.
hours
17 hours a day. And there's nowhere to go
it's
at
just
the end
not
of the day.
Sustainable.
It is none. And getting a counseling appointment, let me say at MAN, that is so hard. Like you could literally be on a wait list. What if I have I know they have 24 hours something services. Like the support. But sometimes I just feel like people need more in-person appointments, because some of us come from places where me talking to my therapist on the phone, I won't feel like it's effective. Like I want to sit next to you and cry.
Oh man. Moral of the story, students are not doing good. And this election is an important one. So if you're tuning in, please make sure you go and vote on April 28th. Let's hear from some students and staff on Memorial University of Newfoundland's campus about their thoughts on the upcoming election. What are your thoughts on the Canadian election? Have you voted yet? Do you plan to vote?
It's my first time voting, so I am planning to vote. I think it's important to at least have a choice in the matter. I think it's also important to show up. So I'm going to have to figure out, past the research on the local and federal elections, just policies that will affect me, policies that will affect people around me, and see what fits best, and hopefully pray for a good term next time.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's like great things to guide you in voting. What would you maybe say to like first time voters who are kind of like hesitant, maybe they like don't want to vote?
I feel like it's a normal feeling to have, not to want to vote, because you kind of feel helpless. Be like, well, they're not gonna hear me out. My vote doesn't count when accounted for in the masses. But just doing a bit of research really does go a long way. I feel like you can start off with just researching what will affect you in the next year or two, financially, academically, and see if you are okay with what the policies might turn out. Even if it doesn't affect you, I think it's still important to have an idea of what's going on around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I ask, you don't have to answer, who do you plan to vote for? Do you know?
I think locally I'm going for NDP. I'm still on the fence for federal. Just because even if I do want to vote for NDP federally, I know they don't have the best stats right now.
Yeah, for sure. I know a lot of people are talking about like strategic voting because they don't want the conservatives to get in. But people forget that you have to check who's like the majority in your riding. So like, for example, one of my friends is from Lab City, and they like in terms of ideology, they lean a lot more conservative, but since they have so many trades there, they're very like into unions. So everybody there votes NDP, which is really interesting. But I've seen people talk about like strategic voting, and they just blindly vote Liberal instead of like checking who's the majority in their riding. So I think it's definitely very important for people to do their research, as you were saying.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting how some people they go past strategic voting and they go more of like exactly the qualifications of who they're voting for, which it's kind of a blind side to it, because I'm like, okay, they got great qualifications, but what are their policies like?
Yeah.
What are they actually going to do?
Yeah, like great resume, but like do you live up to it?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, totally. Anyways, thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Gabriela.
Hello, Gabriela.
How are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
So, the elections are taking place right now. Why do you think voting is important to people?
Why do I think voting is important? Because we all got to have a say in who. Don't complain if you didn't vote. If you didn't vote, don't complain. Right? If you're not gonna, if you're gonna complain. If you didn't vote, don't complain.
Yeah, because voting makes us
exactly.
Change.
Yeah. Now, if your party don't go in, you can complain too. But if you don't vote, don't complain at all.
So have you already voted?
Yes, we did. When Sunday, Pat? Good Friday at Village Mall.
Oh, that's really good to know.
Yeah.
And it's good to know that you know that making a change means you have to vote, because if you don't vote for the people you find worthy of the position.
Exactly. Then you can't complain. I always said that if you didn't vote, don't complain.
Yeah, that's so true.
Right? You know,
so what would you hope from the party that you voted for?
I want to get rich. I want them to make me rich, but they won't. I'm still stuck in the bottom. Do what they says they're going to do.
Yeah.
Don't make these promises and then turn around and say, "Oh, I can't do this now, and you can't do that."
Yeah.
If you're going to give us a raise, or you're going to get rid of the carbon tax. Carbon tax is gone, good, but don't come back in 6 months' time and stick it with something else, you crook.
Yeah.
Because then I'm going to be mad because the guy I voted for.
Yeah.
And I'm upset then.
Oh, okay.
Right, you know, so don't take off one tax and put on another one.
Tax.
That's not helping us out a bit.
Okay, it was so nice chatting with you, and
You're
have
welcome.
a great day.
And you too, have a good day.
What are your thoughts on the upcoming election? Have you voted yet? Do you plan to vote?
I am a little bit nervous. I actually have voted.
Do you mind if I ask who you voted for?
I voted NDP. I'm kind of scared for the conservatives to get in, because there's a lot of bills that Pierre Poilievre voted against that I don't exactly agree with, and I feel like it won't be good for a lot of Canadians.
I saw that he voted against the $10 a day
yes, that's
child
a big
care.
concern, because I have a younger brother who's only 4 years old, and my parents only pay $10 a day for him to go to daycare.
Absolutely.
And if he takes that away, then it's going to up the cost, and it's going to be very hard for a lot of people. Childcare is not going to be as accessible in the future.
For sure.
Yeah.
And well, you have a very interesting perspective because you're going into childcare, and so it's kind of good because you get paid more.
Yes.
But then also as someone who has a younger sibling, and you've seen your parents probably struggle to daycare is so expensive.
Daycare's
It's
really
really
expensive
expensive.
nowadays.
Yeah, my aunt, her son and his wife, they send their kid to daycare for $10 a day. The one on campus actually, and they love it. It's great because they both work full time. One of them's an engineer, one of them is a lawyer. You know, it just makes it so much more easy and accessible and things like that.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of I saw a lot of environmental policies that he
Yes,
voted against.
I don't agree with a lot of his environmental policies. I also don't agree with, he's voted against reproductive rights, 5 different bills for the same cause, which I also don't agree with, because I think that everybody should have a right to their bodily autonomy.
Yeah.
So I'm also concerned about that. And also with education too, he doesn't plan on funding education of any sort. As opposed to NDP, they want to put funding into education and into free lunches, actually. They actually want to set up a free lunch program for schools, which I think is great because there's a lot of kids out there that their parents can't afford to feed them. So I think that would be a really good thing for them to do. I don't know.
Did you have any sort of like strategy or anything that kind of guided you in voting? I know a lot of people are doing strategic voting this time around.
I just did my own research. I don't know much about like strategic voting, but I kind of just did my own research. I looked up like their beliefs and like each party's beliefs and what plans they had, and I just picked the one that worked best for me.
Hi, my name is Gabriela.
Hi, my name is Kathleen.
Nice to meet you. So today I just want to ask you, why do you think it's important for people to vote?
First off, I think this upcoming elections is going to be one of the most significant elections in Canada. So it's important to vote because it will dictate where Canada will be, in the global landscape in North America in the coming years, and especially now that times have changed, like because of geopolitical tensions between Canada and the U.S. and like globally because of President Trump. I think it's important for voters to really put in power politicians or leaders that will prioritize or advance their needs, tackle issues like affordability, the housing crisis, immigration, the trade war with U.S., things like this. So it's important to have that awareness and consciousness that our leaders should be able to sort out very crucial issues, especially at this crucial point in our history.
Thank you very much for that opinion, and I'm glad that you know that voting is actually important because it makes an impact when we vote.
Thanks for tuning into our student election program. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Tim Lawson. I'm a musician and recording artist, and I'm a Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada ambassador. The disease we call MS has touched many lives, mine included. A friend of mine died far too young as a result of MS. So I got involved. I now work to bring awareness to the disease and to the MS Society's efforts to eradicate it. I dedicated an orchestral version of my song, The Right Way On, to my late friend John, a brilliant cello player. I'd like you to get involved too. The MS Society of Canada runs several fundraising events. The annual Super Cities Walk, the Students' Readathon, and the MS Bike Tours all require volunteers and participants. Please get involved. Call 1-800-268-7582 for further details. Together we can conquer MS, an unpredictable, often disabling disease that strikes young adults. This is Tim Lawson saying thank you and asking you to take the right way on.
Well, I've just got through beating up all the clowns in this here joint, and all I got left to do is kick up my feet and go listen to Ring Rust, Atlantic Canada's only source for wrestling news radio. Fridays at 1 p.m., right here on CHMR 93.5 FM.
Et on mangera de la langue de morue, puis des têtes de morue, des galettes de morue, du gratin de morue, une casserole de morue, puis des frites de morue et des biscuits de mer pour dessert.
Bonjour, ici Axel Delgarde.
Et Jenna Maloney.
Nous sommes Paro Poutine. Vous écoutez CHMR 93.5 FM ou en ligne à chmr.ca.
Thanks to those who are tuning in online and on the FM dial. And we're back with Dr. Kelly Bouduc, who is a political science professor at Memorial University. Do you want to just give us like a quick little rundown of your academic background?
Sure. Well, I have my doctorate in political science, and I've been at Memorial for about 18 years now.
Wow.
Most of my research focuses on political representation. So what is it that people who are elected tend to do, and why do they do it?
Mm-hmm.
And in a broader sense, how does that matter for how democracy functions?
Very interesting stuff. I'll hand the floor over to Gabriella to start off our interview there.
Yeah, 18 years is pretty interesting. Called me. Okay, so with your area of expertise in public opinion, why do you think voting matters? Because right now we are looking at a time whereby it's elections time and everyone's trying to navigate all that. So why do you think voting actually matters?
Well, just to bring it back to the idea of public opinion. So we do see a lot of polls when there are elections going on. We see what we think different parties might be getting certain amount of support and so on. So I'll just say I think that voting matters because that is the process that all of us as citizens, the opportunity we have to choose who's going to govern us. So someone is going to be in power. We get to decide who those people are going to be. So I think that's pretty important. But I also think sometimes people might look and say, well, maybe I don't need to vote because the polls are showing this, or maybe I shouldn't vote. I think that if somebody is well informed and can actually look and say, you know what, I don't mind if I don't vote. I don't care who any of these people contesting to be in charge are. If someone wants to decide not to vote, I think that's fine. But the reason I think that people should be well informed is because usually there are stakes in the decisions that we make, and we may not realize the differences that actually occur. I hear people often say things like, "Oh, the parties are all the same." I actually think that's a very uninformed position for people to take. I think it's an easy fallback. But I do think that, in fact, the policies that we're presented with differ a lot. And it's a good exercise to go through finding out which ones we would prefer and voting. And then I'd say, just for students, young people tend to vote the least. The proportions of young people voting is almost always far lower than it is for people my age or older than me, which means that they're being underrepresented in the decisions that are being made. So I think that for students especially, the more of them voting should make not only a difference because they do tend to vote slightly differently than the other demographics that vote, but also just to enhance that voice. It's there for you. Don't pass up the opportunity.
Oh, that's really true. And the thing, we had like some random interviews around campus, and you come to realize that most people are just like, somebody will tell you, I don't care about voting. Like, what will my vote do? Like, it doesn't make a difference. And this has been very common for young people. It may not just be the elections happening right now, even just elections for just the school representatives. They just feel like their voice doesn't matter, so they just don't feel like they should vote or participate in something like that. So what do you think about that?
So it's true that each one of us as individuals don't matter a lot. I'm sorry if you think your vote doesn't matter. The truth is it does matter, but it matters very little because there's many of us voting, and one person can't change everything. Sometimes that's frustrating. But I think, the idea that voting doesn't matter or the outcomes don't matter. Well, I think one of the best examples would be the way that tuition has increased substantially in the time that I've been a professor here at Memorial. And for many years, it was held stable. Those are decisions of governments. Those are governments that we elect, and we play some role in whether those decisions get made because we had the opportunity to vote. Now, it's possible the same things would have happened. But the truth is that if you think that things should be done differently, and that's why I mentioned tuition, I mean, that's pretty central to a student's life, right?
Yeah,
Governments
absolutely.
make these decisions. Even within the university, I see decisions being made all the time that I feel, it would be nice to have a say in whether those decisions were made or not. I just think that when we do have the opportunity to affect the way that we're governed, we should recognize things like that. Like, our life is not just going to be the same regardless of who's in charge. It's going to change a lot. And I think you can also look at examples like the United States to see just how much it can change. Sometimes you don't expect the level of change you're going to experience. So again, it all comes back to kind of knowing what sorts of policies you would prefer. Do you prefer lower tuition or higher tuition? Which party is offering that? Do you prefer that the university be better funded and have more programs, or do you prefer that it be poorly funded and have less programs? Which party is offering that? These are the kinds of things you can go into it with, and it doesn't have to be those things. It can be a number of other things that you might look at too. LGBTQ plus issues continue to be contentious in Canada. Different parties are offering different things around those types of issues as well. So I mentioned just a couple, but there's loads. I mean, you can probably find an issue you care about if you're willing to spend a little bit of time and take a look.
For sure. I find it interesting too to kind of see the parallels, because we had the Munsue election recently, see the parallels between that and like people's attitudes towards the federal election. Because I spoke to a lot of people around Munsue election time, and they were like, oh, I'm not voting, like, what's that going to do? And one of the people we interviewed on campus earlier today, he said, if you don't vote, don't complain. And he's right. He's right, for sure.
So I always get a little caught up with the if you don't vote, you can't complain statement. So I'll just toss this in really quickly. Whether you want to use it or not, you can. I think there's a lot more to democracy than voting. And so I don't like to sort of, if you will, I don't like to highlight just voting as the one thing we do. And once we do it, then we're participating. And if we don't do it, we're not. So that would be the only caution I would make around that. I think that you're perfectly within your rights to not vote and still complain. But I think the main thing is that you think about who you want to be as a citizen and how you're contributing to what's going on around you. And showing up to vote once every 4 years is about the minimal action we could be taking. Most of us could be doing more, and if we actually care, if we say, oh, it's not going to make a difference, there's lots of things we can do that make differences. Writing to our representatives, we know, is more effective than just signing a petition. We know this from research. So if you want to have a bigger impact, really, it takes more work. And I think that's true across the board. If you want to matter, yeah, maybe just showing up and voting is going to be a relatively minor thing, but it's awfully easy to do. It takes next to no time, and so I don't know what kind of payback you really hope for from it. But it is very satisfying to do it, and to me, it's one step among many that we should all be taking if we actually care about how we're governed.
For sure. And what other steps, like, do you think that people could take if they want to be more involved in democracy?
Well, I mean, for one, I think that the basic steps of just informing yourself. So, you know, take a political science course would be one possibility. But there's a lot of different things people can do in terms of accessing media, looking up party platforms online, actually knowing what there is, and then making decisions about it. Now, what do those decisions involve? Sometimes it just involves voting. Sometimes it involves getting involved with a party. If you look at a party and say, you know what, that actually appeals to me, but I'd like to play some role in the sorts of policies they have. In the longer term, I'd like to have a party that's actually offering something that I want to vote for. Well, joining the party will help that happen, but staying at home and saying, oh, they're all the same won't. So it really is about participation. Maybe you want to get involved in protests. Maybe you want to sign petitions. Maybe you want to become somebody who's doing the sorts of things you're doing right here. Maybe you want to actually be in the media. Maybe you want to ask the questions. Maybe you want to put information out there. Maybe you want a podcast or a blog, a Substack, whatever people are using. There's all these kinds of different possibilities, and these are all just additional forms of participation. But like I said, there's also, some people will sign a petition. Other people will actually write a letter to their MP or their MHA. We know that the second form is more effective. If you do something personal, if you write it and you sign it, it's a lot more effective than just putting your signature on a petition. And so I use that as an example to just always say it is more work, but we know that the examples of more work always tend to have a bigger impact. So your impact is going to be based on the proportion of work you put into it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's good to know, for sure. Like, what effects do you think that, like, specifically in regards to young people, what effects do you think that, like, media and, like, online culture being so integrated into elections, like, might have on the outcome of them?
Well, I mean, I would hope that the media that young people are using would sort of funnel them towards politics. I'm guessing in a lot of cases that's not actually what's happening, that there's negativity, beyond just negativity, that there's also misinformation. There's ways to misunderstand or be confused by what's out there. I remember a number of years ago when Elections Canada was running ads during an election campaign, and they were actually misinforming people about actual policies about how you vote. And I remember watching it and thinking, that's really terrible. That implies that people have to, I think what they were doing is they were saying you have to register in advance of voting, which is true. You can't vote if you're not registered, but you can register on election day at the polling station. And they weren't saying that. They were making it sound like if you haven't registered in advance, then don't bother showing up. And I think that's how people interpreted those commercials. And that's really frustrating to see anything that's out there that's suggesting that it's harder to vote, or that maybe you shouldn't, or that you've missed out. The truth is that voting is relatively easy, and even if you just show up at the last minute on election day to a polling station, they will find a way for you to vote if you are eligible to vote. And so, yeah, I guess my concern is that there's so many different voices out there, so many different places to look for information. And that's, that's many years ago, but I feel like there's so many other avenues where people could be being misinformed or having it suggested to them that they don't matter. Or, again, even just reading polls. If you look at polls and you think, oh, well, that party is up by 5%, that means I don't have to show up. I think you're probably misinterpreting what's probably happening at a local level, and that your vote probably can matter and probably will matter. And even if it doesn't, even if the outcome isn't the one vote, if it's not you, right? It's okay that it's not entirely about you. What you're doing is you're engaging in something that is a collective experience. It's quite satisfying afterwards to say, I did vote, I went out, I did this thing. And to me, it draws you in deeper to understanding what's going on, to all the other things that you could potentially affect. I don't know if I fully answered your question there, but
no, I think you did for sure. I think people often seek their information like in the wrong places, and that can be sometimes misleading. I see a lot of like politics has been like very sensationalized and very like meme-ified online, and I think that kind of sometimes detracts from like people actually taking the time to like seek out issues, or sometimes it can kind of like de-emphasize the severity of things that are going on, for sure. So I definitely agree. I think that people should like seek out good reputable sources, for sure.
Yeah.
And those good reputable sources should try and stay that way and not have misleading commercials.
Well, I think we should all be doing the most that we can to make voting accessible, make it easy, make it straightforward. And I actually think, now granted, I've done it a number of times, so it is all those things for me. But I do actually think it's relatively straightforward. It is easy. And I honestly think even if someone said, there's no reason for me to do it, I think they would have a fair bit of satisfaction after having done it.
For sure. I voted advance on campus, and it took me literally 2 minutes. I thought it was going to be so much longer. I was in and out. It was so easy. And I got a sticker, and I felt really good after. So it was great.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people will have perhaps experienced just this past weekend when there were lineups for people to do advance voting at some places. And I think it's just because the volume of people trying to vote was more than usual. It was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
But that is a very rare experience in terms of voting in Canada. The way that I vote actually is once an election is called, I go online and I order a mail-in ballot. And I realize I don't have to do this. This isn't, but it's the easiest way for me to vote. Why not just do it? And honestly, that's what I would encourage most people to do, is if you don't want to have to go somewhere on a given day and even risk sitting in a lineup, it's too late to do now. It's too close to election day. You had to do this, I think, by a week or two ago. But during elections, you can also you can get a mail-in ballot. It's super easy. It arrives at your house. You just drop it in a box whenever you get a chance over the course of multiple weeks, and you're fine. So,
for sure. I do find it interesting how many people went out to the advance polls. For sure. I was seeing a lot of stuff on like Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, everything, where people were like, we're so scared for this election, we're going out to the advanced polls. Just like the anticipation. I feel like there's a lot of anticipation around this election.
Yeah, I think we're seeing something quite different from what we've seen historically.
I think people really want the change, like they want to make the change themselves. So I really think everyone's really getting on their business and going to vote.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. But I'd like to ask you, particularly for students, young people in Newfoundland to be specific, and students at this campus, if they come out in bigger numbers to go vote, do you think this would have an impact on the outcome?
Well, it really depends on whether they are voting for different candidates, right? If you talk about impact, but I would say typically the younger demographic has slightly different voter preferences than the other demographics do. So there is a reasonable likelihood that if more young people show up, the people who get elected will change. I think you can also think of it a little bit as a longer term thing. The more that young people are involved, the more likely their demographic will be evident in the people we represent too. Like right now, most of the people we tend to elect tend to be my age or older. Not all of them, but a number of them do. And I think that the greater participation at the voting level isn't just that you went out and voted and maybe a different party gets elected. It's about showing participation while young and getting involved, and hopefully eventually also being the representatives, that we have a better distribution of age among the people we elect. So that's a sort of an after effect of the thing you're talking about.
Okay. And then with most of the politicians, do you think they're prioritizing some of the things that the youth have been looking for in some of their agendas?
I think there's very little of that in this election. There are certainly concerns that young people would have, I assume, around things like housing, things like employment. I think that there are policies that are geared towards those factors, but they're not really highlighting young people specifically. I use this, if I think of like the 2015 election when Justin Trudeau first became Prime Minister. The Liberal Party at the time was offering legalization of cannabis. I'm not saying that that's good for young people or that it's bad for, or that it's good or bad for anybody. I personally think it's a good policy, but that's not meant to decide those sorts of things. But more so, I think that's the sort of thing that draws young people out. It's something that younger people will tend to have a particular viewpoint on, which probably dissipates a bit amongst older groups. I think it's really great when parties do that, even if it is legalization of a recreational drug. Like, there's lots of other things that maybe could fall in here. But I think part of the reason that parties don't focus as much on those things is also partly a function of the fact that young people tend not to show up to vote as much. So they're not the same target audience. But I'd say 2015 was a time when we actually saw an increase, and it was because there was something that tended to pique people's interest who were young. I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah, for sure. Like my younger sister is 18, and like a bunch of her friends were like not gonna go vote, and then she was like, "Why? Genuinely, why? What's your reason not to?" Like, I don't know. I think it's really interesting because a lot of young people, like, these policies are gonna probably affect them the most, especially like us, like being in university, and we're gonna be out in the job market, in the workforce soon, and like probably living on our own as well. Like, there's a lot of expenses that come with that, and like finding a job right now is really hard. So I think that like if they prioritized things like that, they would definitely get like university students at least in droves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, if the young people are participating less, then in turn the parties will focus less. Mm-hmm. The more that you show up, the more that you do, the more you get involved with the parties too. I personally don't get involved with parties myself, but I think that it's a great thing to encourage people to do. All those things are going to increase the likelihood that what's happening politically will matter to you and that you'll be interested in it.
Thank you very much for this interview. It was nice having you. We'll end there for today.
Thanks very much.
And I think that's our time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
CHMR. Thank you to Dr. Kelly Bladuke and the folks we spoke to in the Memorial University food court. Everybody, don't forget to vote.
This episode is part of the AltElxn 2025, a national collaboration bringing diverse voices and critical conversations to the airwaves ahead of Canada's federal election. Don't forget to tune in to our live National Election Night broadcast on Monday, April 28th, and visit AltElxn.ca for interviews, resources, and local station listings. A big thanks to our sponsors at the Covering Canada Election 2025 Fund, made possible through the Public Policy Forum, the Rideau Hall Foundation, and the Michener Awards Foundation. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on election night.